All right, Eugene, let's talk about the political calculus here, right? Why he thinks that there is a distinction politically between the congressional committee and DOJ. And let's also talk about this book tour, right? You saw that comment that he just gave. That was clearly something he wanted on the record, sort of both this idea that Donald Trump was remorseful, but also this idea that Pence himself was angry. How has that gone overall for him? And why do you think he is making this distinction between the congressional committee and DOJ?
Yeah, on the book tour, and what he just said, he's written about this in the book, and he said that Trump wasn't remorseful. Trump himself clearly doesn't seem remorseful. So if Pence sensed that in that moment, that's one thing. We have not seen that at all. As we've gotten further and further away from January 6th, that much has been clear. And on this book tour, he's done trying to thread the needle of seeming like a pretty good option for conservatives and Republicans who don't want to vote for Donald Trump, while at the same time not trying to run away from Donald Trump as much as he possibly can. That's a difficult ask, right? One, he was Donald Trump's vice president, but at the same time, Donald Trump's people that like Donald Trump were saying they were going to hang Mike Pence. And so he is trying to seem a little bit tougher. I talked to a former Pence aide last week, and they said he has to be even tougher than he is. He said that Trump should apologize after that meeting with Fuentes and Kanye and Ye at Mar-a-Lago, but that if he wants to be president, which it seems like Pence does, he's going to have to do even more. And whether or not he has that in him, this person said, is going to be up to as we move forward, and if there's other folks that are willing to do it as well, because it doesn't seem like Pence is going to do it by himself. And also, when it comes to attacking the January 6th committee, which Republicans have been doing from the very beginning, in the Republican Party, that's a very safe place to be, right? Even when you talk to folks who we would consider moderate Republicans, they also don't think highly of the January 6th committee for a myriad of reasons, some not based in fact at times. But then when people talk about the DOJ, again, like Barbara was saying, it's part of the executive branch. It's going to be behind closed doors. That is a much easier pill to swallow for someone like Mike Pence. And we've heard from a lot of his aides, or the committee has heard from a lot of his aides already, and they wouldn't have done that if they didn't have his okay. And so we've heard from Mark Short, for example, a close aide of Pence's. So we've heard largely how Pence world was feeling about this. But I think, the DOJ definitely wants to hear his testimony, and it's interesting that he's at least flirting with the idea of doing that, as long as it stays behind closed doors. And frankly, DOJ has a lot less leaks than a committee from Congress will have. So I think that it makes it a little safer for him to do that.